Welcome to the November 19th, 2019 regular meeting of the East Lansing City Council. Will the clerk call the roll? Where's the clerk?
Councilmember Babcock?
Here.
Councilmember Gregg?
Here.
Councilmember Meadows?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Stevens?
Here.
Mayor Byer?
Here. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
I'll move the approval of the agenda with the addition of an item 4.7, which would be to appoint Jessy Gregg to the Planning Commission as an ex officio member.
I'll second that.
Approved with an amendment by Councilmember Meadows and seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have an amended agenda. The next item is approval of the minutes from November 12th, 2019. Do I have a motion for that?
So moved.
Moved by Councilmember Meadows, seconded by Councilmember Gregg. All those in favor, please vote by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Those minutes are approved. Now we're into the communications part of the agenda. First, our goal is to publish on the City Council website all the communications received by City Council. And I want to add a little caveat to that. So we are not putting up things like invitations, announcements, things that aren't from our citizens about our city. So I think there was some confusion about that last time around. But if there's something that you have submitted or you know should be up there, please let me know personally and I will make sure it gets up there. Okay, now we are in the area of communications from the audience. And I have one blue card from Mr. Eli Gregg. Would you like to speak now or would you like to speak when we get to that agenda item?
When we're at the agenda item.
Okay. And, oh, we don't talk about it at all?
I don't know.
We're pretty new to this. Mr. Lahanis, when would be the best time for him to talk?
What is his item?
It's a small cell.
Small cell. You certainly can call for him to speak at the small cell at that item if as long as we remember to.
Okay.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you, though. I wasn't sure either. Yeah. Ms. Drager,
Well, actually,
you're just holding the pen.
you're going to fill that out.
You can fill it out later. You can just talk.
Just talk now.
Go ahead.
So I'm here to learn about the appropriations for funding for maintenance at the Hannah Center.
Okay.
And my question is, as a newbie to this, is there a process of vetting proposals or for accepting contracts? And if there is, were the contracts that you are going to propose to award tonight, did they go through that process?
And that's for maintenance? For
at the
just
Hannah
the
Center.
Hannah Center.
The pool maintenance, the slide maintenance, oh, and also the
Yep.
Bailey Park.
Mr. Lahanis, are you going to
Yes,
speak
so
about that?
there's going to be the items coming up. We can ask Mr. McCaffrey to come up and explain the process that he put to get those contracts back.
Okay.
So we can certainly do that.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you want to do that right now and have him do that, or just to
Sure, might
briefly
as well do it
explain?
now.
Yes.
That way you don't have to wait.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So in order to answer this question, the first one would be the repair to the ceiling in the tunnel for the swimming pool. And we had a consulting engineer provide the engineering for us, and then what we did is we went out to bid on that project, and we received bids on the project, and then the low bidder was awarded, was recommended for award of the contract. So that's how we did that particular project. With respect to the replacement for the water slide, what we're doing there is we have the Miracle Midwest, who is the same company that put our slide in 20 years ago, a similar slide to be able to replace that slide. So we didn't go out to bid on that particular project. And then the Bailey project, the Bailey Park project, we went out to bid on that project. Again, we went through an engineering process. We went out for bid on that project, and we're recommending award of the contract to the low bidder on that project. In the case of both the ceiling repair project as well as the Bailey Park project, in addition to the staff review, we have a consultant review that we go through in terms of a recommendation for the award of the contract.
So both of those are actually the low bid?
Yes. Mhm.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
We are still in the public hearing, or sorry, in the public communications part of the agenda. Would anybody else like to speak? Ms. Drager?
Yes, thank you. I wasn't planning to ask you about this, but then I got a communication from the city clerk's office, which just confused me further. I appreciate the mayor explaining what's now going to go in council communications. It's great that we're not going to have that spam anymore. Thank you for getting rid of the spam in council communications. You all will have received my communication, but I just want to quickly read it into the record and tell you what I received today. I sent you yesterday a message saying, our mayor and Mayor Pro Tem have called for a new era of transparency, including with regard to communications from citizens, and I applaud that and write for help in that regard. Specifically, I want your help obtaining answers on what happened to a petition regarding court consolidation organized by and submitted by East Lansing residents. So on September 24th, I was tipped off that a citizen petition regarding court consolidation had been sent in and had been organized by citizen Joni Brogan, and that it was being suppressed from public view, so I requested it under the Freedom of Information Act, which you know is called FOIA. And I'm not going to go into all this detail because I don't want to waste lots of people's time, but basically this communication was the 5th communication to council critical of court consolidation that had failed to make it into the council's published written communication since April of 2019. The other 4 were from the Friends of Ingham County Veteran Treatments Court, the Lansing chapter of the NAACP, retired 54B District Court Judge David Jordan, and the current 2 54B District Court Judges Larkin and Ball. And all 5 of these were all addressed to City Council, I know, because I've been given copies of them, and all were not in the public record, and I don't know why. So on October 1st, I was informed by the city clerk's office that the city would need the maximum extension allowed under FOIA law and that I would get a response on October 15th. On October 15th, there was the construction accident at the Abbott building. And I was downtown when the city clerk called me, and there was a lot going on, but what I heard her say to me was that she knew who had the petition, but they needed a couple more days to get it, even though it was due to me on that day, and was that okay? And I said, yes, but just put it in writing. So she put in writing that I would have it within a few days. And then on October 18th, which was 3 days later, I received a formal denial from the city clerk's office claiming no records found. So then on October 20th, I reached Joni Brogan, and she told me by telephone that she knew Mark Meadows had seen this because when he came to her door to campaign, he had said that he had seen it and wanted to discuss it with her. The next day, October 21st, I asked him what was going on, and he responded that he had seen a letter, but he didn't know about a petition, et cetera, and I gave you that communication. Later the same day, the city clerk told me that I could now have a copy that Joni Brogan had sent in the day before, but it wasn't the signed petition. This was all very weird. On October 22nd, I asked Mark Meadows at City Council discussion what happened with this, and he indicated, this is all on the tape, that he got it from staff and gave it back to staff. He said he had no idea where it was. He said he had no idea why it wasn't in the council communications. Mr. Lahanis was absent, so I couldn't ask Mr. Lahanis what was going on. And I said to you in this communication I sent yesterday that I want an investigation and an answer about what happened with this document. In my experience, city staff doesn't just lose documents, particularly ones that have obvious significance, so I find it hard to believe that the city staff simply lost this and 4 other related communications. So I asked you to find out who kept this communication from the city council, who kept it from the public, and are these people still empowered to commit this kind of suppression or major error in terms of communications? So now when I came over to city council tonight, I got a communication from the city clerk's office providing me the petition. And it's the real one. And it is dated received August 20th, 2019 by the city clerk's office. So now I have the document I was looking for, but for me this raises tremendous questions about what's going on in this city, because how could it be the case that the city clerk received this and I was denied it under FOIA, and I was told there were no records found, and now suddenly the record has been found? It seems like something happened since yesterday when I asked for an investigation. I just want to be clear, I'm not withdrawing this request for an investigation. To my mind, this raises tremendous questions about what's going on in this city. I don't know who had this and where it went and why it was now found, but I would love to know. This is signed by dozens of members of the community. Clearly, the city clerk stamped it, indicating she understood it to be an important communication. It clearly continued to exist somewhere because now I've been given it. So what happened? I'm not asking you to answer this tonight, but I would like to know what's going on, including with those 4 other communications. What's happening? Thank you.
Is there a reason you don't want an answer tonight?
Oh, if you have an answer tonight, I would absolutely take an answer tonight.
I'll take a stab at it. The 4 other communications are not yet up. The other 4 that you mentioned, the one from the judge and the 2 from the judges, Ms. Drager, they're still not up.
Correct. I've never seen them in council communications, and I looked at tonight's council communications, and they're not in that packet.
Okay, so Mr. Lahanas, can we make sure we get those up?
I will see where they are and put them up.
Okay, and I did talk to some staff about this, and what happens is something that is to city council, we weren't necessarily going through and putting all of that up because a lot of it was spam, and these obviously were not. So that was just simply an error. I've been following this process, and I haven't seen anything nefarious for those 4, but we will get those up, and we'll move forward if that's okay.
I still want an investigation on
Okay.
what happened.
Yeah, I'm not addressing that.
I mean,
And then-
it's not just that, right? Under FOIA, I was denied this.
Well, let me finish that one. So what happened with this particular petition, I just found this out today too, and I'm not quite sure of the policy for revealing all of the small errors that happened, but what the heck, I'm gonna do that. So what happened was, that petition came up to the table and we all looked at it. It was put in somebody's packet and attached to the back of one with a paper clip and never got back to the clerk. It was stored somewhere else. When you had your FOI, staff looked all over for this. They looked in the trash, they looked in the recycling, everybody looked in their trash, nobody could find it, so staff tried to find the original to give you something that would at least have the wording of the petition, but not everybody's signature signed, obviously. Then, when they were getting ready to give you that, they found the original document, and that's how you got it.
So when you say it came to the table and you all had it.
It came up to the table and it was being passed around, I believe. I don't remember it either, but that was the explanation I got. Somehow it came to, I assumed it was the council table. It may have been a different table, but I assumed it was the council table. It got mixed in with some other papers and it never got collected to go back to where it needed to go so it could become foilable.
Councilmember Stevens, do you remember seeing this?
I don't recall it at this time.
And I don't either, but I think it was discussed. And we did talk about the petition, and you knew it existed.
I knew it existed because a person tipped me off.
Oh.
I knew it existed because a city employee tipped me off that it existed.
Okay, so I don't obviously have all the details, but the basic gist is that somewhere it got clipped to some papers that were stored in a place that you wouldn't think they would be stored because it was supposed to go to a different place and it didn't go there. And they've searched for a long time and found it. And I know that that's not a pretty answer, but that's what happened.
And the 4 other communications that were also addressed to city council were not seen as worthy of going into citizen communications?
No, we just have one person reading all of the email, and from now on, that kind of thing will get into communications.
Because it seems like a communication from the Lansing NAACP
Yes, and it will be.
would be seen as more significant than spam from a national anti-marijuana group.
I am not disagreeing with you. And I hope, and if this ever happens again, you don't need to wait to a public meeting. Just send an email, I will get it on and put it up.
I appreciate that very much, and I appreciate the transparency. Thank you.
Yep. Would anybody else like to approach and speak to council? Are you finished, Mr.
Yes,
Yep. Thanks.
With our laptops. I don't know what happened to my card. Diane Wing, 1024 Huntington Road. I was listening to your 6 o'clock meeting when you were talking about council appointments to commissions. And I heard part of your conversation, the microphone wasn't picking up all of it, but with Mr. Fehrenbach as well, talking about the Michigan Avenue Corridor Improvement Authority. And I'm here to absolutely say, yes, we need to reinvigorate the Corridor Improvement Authority. There is a lot of work that's going on along Michigan Avenue right now. Part of it is not related to East Lansing, but it is absolutely right next door to East Lansing, Red Cedar Renaissance. There's already a developer starting to make noises along Michigan Avenue in the Chesterfield Hills neighborhood. Obviously, with the Sears Frandor closing, I know the Gillespie development is probably salivating over the demolition of that particular building. So we've probably waited a year too long even to reinvigorate the Corridor Improvement Authority. So I'm here to tell you, I believe believe my term actually expires this year. I would love to be re-upped on the Corridor Improvement Authority. I'm not sure who I would work with, whether it's someone on council or whether it's Mr. Fehrenbach, Council Member Babcock. But just again, please let's do that. Secondly, I'd also like to talk to Ordinance 1476, but would prefer to speak to that when it comes up for the agenda item. Could I reserve my time to speak when you're speaking to Ordinance 1476?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hang on a second, we have.
I'm sorry, I just didn't catch your name. I'm sorry.
Diane Wing. Wing.
And
Okay,
grab a
thank
card,
you.
Diane, would you?
Do you have my card?
Oh, good.
Sorry.
Oh, I have your card?
Oh, it's here.
Thank you. And Mayor Pro Tem has a question for you.
Hey, and I won't, probably just so it's on the record. So I think I was assigned to this committee over the past 2 years, and I never received like notice of a meeting. Just want to confirm with you that there wasn't a meeting at the time, that I just like wasn't aware of.
I do not believe there's been a meeting for almost 2 years.
Okay.
I believe that the last meeting was when Lori Okay. the staff member in charge of it. With Ms. Mullins' departure, I just don't believe it got carried over.
That's fine. I just personally wanted to make sure that I didn't.
No,
I didn't
you have
miss
not missed a
that
meeting.
I
Not
should
to
have been
my
there for.
knowledge, at least.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wing. Would anybody else like to speak to council? Anybody else?
I had a question for the first speaker, if that's okay.
That was, who was that?
The woman that asked about the Parks and Recreation.
Oh,
And we kind of went into an explanation then.
sure, sorry. Councilmember, or Mayor Pro Tem would like to respond to your question?
So after hearing the explanation from our Parks and Recreation Director, did you have any concerns with the contracts that were on the agenda tonight, or anything that you would like to relay to us?
I just wondered about the process.
Oh, okay. All right. Just wanted to make sure of that.
Had gone through that process. Thank you for the explanation.
Thank you. Okay, we'll close that a portion of the agenda and move on to communications from the mayor and council members. Councilmember Gregg, do you have any more communications?
Not at the moment.
Councilmember Babcock?
No, thank you very much for coming.
Councilmember Meadows?
I'd just like to comment on a Facebook post that I saw, and being one who also kayaks in the cold weather, I'd like to compliment Eli for dragging a council member out on the Grand River this weekend in a canoe. So.
Sorry, Mayor Pro Tem?
So I just had a couple of things to say. So first off, we had two really cool meetings today that I think help the public know what's going on in the development process, and also help the public understand what the meat and potatoes is of commission appointments. And I think it's really, really important that we did what we did. The mayor and I discussed this when we were selected for these positions, that we wanted to look for a government that talked to the people, that was active in communication. And, you know, we're looking at a situation where those commission appointments, those designees, didn't necessarily need to be in public. There wasn't any law requiring it. However, we thought that it's not about what's required, it's about what's right to do. And so it's a really, really cool step, I think, in the right direction, and I hope that you'll see a lot more of that kind of action from this council. As well, with the same meeting with the DDA, after hearing their concerns and wanting to have a joint meeting to have an open discussion about our ideals, what we wanted to see and what they wanted to see, I think it informs the public of where your elected officials and where your commission members are at. And I think it's also just good because we have to work together on this stuff. So that's really, really cool. The last thing is that I'm still hearing concerns from residents of the hub. There is another development being proposed, and I have still heard concerns from a couple of residents that either were told that they would be worked out with management, possibly a rent discount, or their room was not up to standard, or what they had been proposed when they signed the lease, and it's still not up to that standard. I am interested, and I was going to send an email myself, but I'd prefer that staff do it. I'm interested for a follow-up conversation with them because we had an initial conversation where they said they're going to do outreach and they're going to look into all the concerns of residents. I want to know how many people expressed issues to them. I want to know how many people received a rent reduction because of that, and how many people were displaced due to extra construction in the rooms, and then as well, if anybody received the money that they had promised and reimbursement for lunch and travel when people had to stay possibly even an extra day because move-in time happened later than what was expected. I can one more time relay that to staff afterwards, but I think it's important for this council to be aware of what's going on there and the steps that were taken after the fact, not just the promises they made, but if they actually followed through on those, because I'm getting indication from residents that that is not the case. So.
Thank you. And the city manager's report?
No report this evening, thank you.
And the city attorney's report?
Thank you, Mayor. No report this evening.
Okay, thank you. The next part of the agenda is a special presentation, Ashley Home Furnishings, Granger Waste and Recycling, and H&H Mobile.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council. Welcome aboard. We just wanted to come before you this evening and acknowledge some of our local businesses that have donated goods or services and just to let you know and let them know how much we appreciate them for what they offered and what they did on our behalf at the East Lansing Fire Department and for the greater community and residents of the City of East Lansing. I have with me Deputy Chief Dawn Carson. She helped to coordinate getting representatives here this evening and speaking with those that we would like to acknowledge. We're probably well past due in some cases, but we just wanted to let you know what they've done and to show how much we appreciate it again. So I have with me, I'm going to start with Mr. Little, Jim Little from H&H Mobile, Josh Clayton, and Peter Della Moretta. If you could come forward. H&H Mobile, I found out, will be celebrating their 50th anniversary on December 17th. Is that correct? Okay. And so they've been a local business for quite a while. And on a number of occasions, they have, when we've requested cars, we have to practice our extrication and using our jaws of life on cars. And they have, on a number of occasions, come out and donate the vehicles, brought them out to the fire station so we can work to get better at our techniques to help our residents when they are in that type of emergency. And they have done this all the time. They've never asked, never denied a request. They've done it graciously. They've picked up the vehicles after we've torn them apart and left them in bits and pieces, and they've just done a number of things on behalf of the fire department. It's not just that. They've also done things for us in the evenings when we've had difficulty with our vehicles and those things. And so we just really, again, wanted to come before you and say thank you. We have a plaque, and our plaques read, and I won't read them for each one. I'll just say insert the business name after each one that we have come forward. But the plaques read, presented to, in this case, H&H Mobile, in recognition and appreciation for your continued service and active involvement with East Lansing Fire Department in 2019. And I don't know if anyone wants to say anything, if that's appropriate, but we just want to say thank you.
Well, I just want to take a quick second and say that we're very fortunate to live in such a great community, led by wonderful leadership and great services and things that we have, and we're just very proud to be able to participate with it. So, thank you all.
Thank you. Sorry. Councilmember Meadows?
Yeah, before, it's not really in relation to the donation of this vehicle, but I just want to note that I received some kind of notification that indicated that our fire department had won a contest against Meridian Township.
That's correct.
Where we cut the car in half, and we cut the car in half in 1.5 seconds, where it took them 2.5 seconds. Or so.
We've been practicing, obviously. We've been practicing, so no, but it's really, we just appreciate them for what they have done. I also would like to bring before you, we're going to have Keith Granger, Mr. Keith Granger. Then I have Ehab and Kendall, and Mr. Granger is here on behalf of Granger Waste and Recycling, and then Ehab and Kendall, and I didn't get their last names, I apologize for that, are here from Ashley Home Furnishings. Now, what they approached us unsolicited and offered to give us mattresses and bedding for the firefighters that they use at the times when they're not on call, when they haven't been called out for rescue and that. And this was an unsolicited request, just something they wanted to do, and we thought it was such a nice gesture. And then Granger took care of the disposal and discarding and recycling of the former mattresses. And we were just stunned that they would actually call and offer to do this. And again, we wanted to acknowledge them for this. And I would say, remind them, I said outside that, you know, this is done on public money and public revenue, so these plaques don't represent at all how we really feel about what they offered and what they brought to us. I mean, I wish we could do more, but obviously we're limited in how we can acknowledge, but we wanted to bring them before you and just allow them an opportunity to be recognized for that. So I will defer if they would like to make any comments there.
You're very generous in doing this. It was something we were more than happy to contribute to the cause. So we want happy firemen and women.
Well, for us, we're happy to just be in this community. We just opened our store up about 2 years ago. But I work for an organization that's an awesome organization. It believes in investing in the community's natural resources. And those natural resources is the community's people. So we do believe that the fire department, this is a humbling experience for us because the true recognition really goes to them.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Sorry, I'm going to have to treat someone before I leave here if I trip them. Thank you for allowing us to do that.
Thank you. Nice job. Okay, the next part of our agenda is the consent agenda. Do you have the amendment?
Yes, I have the added item, and I'll be reading that in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Mr.
so.
Lahanas.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have the following items on the consent agenda for council's consideration. Item 4.1, approve a contract in the amount of $41,895 for Ram Construction Services of Michigan Incorporated for swim pool tunnel repairs at the East Lansing Hanna Community Center, and furthermore approve a project contingency of $6,500 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 4.2, approve a purchase order in the amount of $19,596 to Miracle Midwest to supply and install a replacement water slide at the East Lansing Hanna Community Center swim pool and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 4.3, approve a contract with MacKenzie Company in the amount of $266,663.70 for improvements to the Bailey Park, and furthermore approve a project contingency of $20,000 and authorize the city manager to sign. Item 4.4, set a public hearing for December 17, 2019 to consider Ordinance 1431, an ordinance to amend the zoning use district map of Chapter 50, zoning of the Code of City of East Lansing to rezone the northeast corner of Hazlitt and Park Lake Roads from RA residential agriculture to B2 retail sales business. Item 4.5, set a public hearing for December 17, 2019 to consider a modified site plan and special use permit application for the properties at 100 West Grand River Avenue, 120 through 140 West Grand River Avenue, and 341 to 345 Evergreen Avenue for a 5-story residential building with 1 level of parking, including a mix of apartment types ranging from studios to 3-bed units. Item 4.6, set a public hearing for December 17, 2019, to consider a special use permit and site plan application for the property at 115 Albert Avenue to allow the establishment of a restaurant, including alcohol sales. Item 4.7, appointment of Jessy Gregg as an ex officio member of the Planning Commission. Those are all the items on the consent agenda for council's consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Lahanas. Would anybody like any of these items removed from the consent agenda? Then can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
So moved by Mayor Pro Tem, supported by Councilmember Meadows. All those in...
Just a quick question for staff. Do we need to establish a term end for Councilmember Gregg, or is it?
It's their entire elected process.
That's my question.
Any other questions? All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same. The consent agenda is approved. The next item on the agenda is the business agenda. The first part of the business agenda, number 5.1, is consideration of a request for qualifications and proposals for a housing study. And our staff person is Mr. Haywood? No, Mr. Faribault.
Good evening, Council.
Faribault.
As you're aware, on the 22nd of October, the council held a discussion-only meeting to discuss an outline of request for proposals for a housing study. In front of you tonight is our attempt to incorporate the discussion that was had and expand that outline into this draft RFP in front of you. So essentially, there's quite a bit of background and context that we try to provide. And the meat and potatoes, I would say, is on page 8 and 9 when we get into the scope of the study, both the qualitative kind of questions we're trying to answer with the study, as well as the quantitative data. This study is anticipated to be essentially the starting point. I think there would be follow-on studies that will be made possible by this data, and also this data, I think, is data we intend to track over time and continue to update and track some of these benchline analysis. So with that, I'd be happy to take any additional feedback. I think that we'd like to get to a place where we can put the RFP out on the street so that the data can be collected prior to the end of April, when obviously students will be packing up and taking off for other places. So we'd like to make sure that those folks get counted while they're here.
Thank you. The council members who were here saw the beginnings of this, the detail in a previous meeting, where I had all of my questions answered. But does anybody else have any questions? Mayor Pro Tem?
In the page 2 at the bottom, the section on conversion of neighborhood rental properties, I was reading through and I was trying to get kind of a clear picture of what the intention is behind that. Is that more an intention of seeing if there will be future conversion to rental properties, or is that more concern of, I think, the idea that we've heard occasionally where conversion of rental properties back to owner-occupied? Or is that just looking at the trend in general?
I think this is just trying to provide some context for the history of the city and this. But if you get to page 8 and 9, where we talk really about the data behind that we're looking for the consultant to gather and analyze, that's really more sort of direct to what we're seeking. We just wanted to provide that context.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense to me.
Any other questions? Councilmember Meadows?
Just a comment, because I think with it isn't just us. With 2-3 large projects in the downtown area, we've seen this expansion of close by student housing in Meridian Township along Hagedorn Road. We're about to have 1,200 more beds built in Red Cedar. So I think that information, the point that you brought up, I think this housing study can begin to provide us information as to whether we're going to see some transformational changes, further out from Grand River in the neighborhoods that may have been dominated by rental housing in the past, but maybe because of this other close-in housing, will not be in the future. So I think we need to know that, and I'm hoping that we get some information with regard to that.
Mayor Pro Tem?
So, and you had mentioned this specifically in point 7 on page 9, but non-conventional rentals such as single-family homes, duplexes, units over storefronts. The phrase non-conventional rentals such as single-family homes is intent on family rentals, right? Or is that? I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
I'm going to ask Mr. Irwin to opine on that piece.
Tell me again rephrase, tell me again where you're at.
Just because we have like a lot of different terms for owner-occupied single-family homes that get mixed up, so I want to do is the non-conventional rentals such as single-family homes is intent on seeing the potential of rentals that are for families rather than students. Is that a correct assessment?
Can you tell us what page you're referencing?
It's page 9. Oh, well, I guess page 8. It says page 9 at the bottom, but page 8, a little bit above that, and point 7 on the page under quantitative data / analysis.
Yep, that was, go ahead.
Yeah, I think our intent there is just to indicate that we want comprehensive, including all those types of housings.
All right, awesome.
Of housing.
Councilmember Gregg?
Yeah.
I thought this was actually pretty great. Almost everything that I would have hoped to learn from a housing study has been touched on in here. I just wanted to either I missed it or it's bundled in with other things. But owner-occupied housing, one of the things that has come up multiple times in the idea of diversifying housing downtown is more owner-occupied condominiums. So not freestanding single-family homes, but built into a multi-unit dwelling. And I see a few things in here like demand forecast, new owner-occupied growth. So I think there's areas that would touch on that, but I was wondering if there was a way that we could kind of, I think my understanding is the problem is that that's not a compelling type of property to build. It's not a particularly lucrative type of development, but yet I see it happening in other cities. So like somehow in some markets it is a compelling type of property to build, and is there a way that we could influence that? I don't know if that is appropriate to address in the housing study, but.
So I think certainly it is, and I think we can be more specific about owner-occupied condos, perhaps under number 8. And again, I think this is a starting place for the study. So I think we expect to glean some information that then will perhaps lead to other questions and other sort of policy questions.
Cool. Thanks.
Yes, Councilmember Meadows.
I just want to follow up on that because I agree with that completely. I think we do need more information on that because I think you're right. I think the observation is with the units of condos that we have in the city that there's a huge demand for them, and that even one of the condo presidents told me he gets a couple of calls a week saying, is there anything available there? So there obviously is a demand, and it seems to be being met in other communities, and somehow we keep getting told that, oh, I'm sorry, we can't build that because it won't sell. I think we need to figure out a way to encourage this market, and so I think this housing study will give us that kind of information.
So I might suggest adding that under 8 and also under 9, and we can do that, prior to releasing it with your. I'm seeing heads nodding, so go ahead.
Any other comments? So what are you looking for in terms of a motion?
I think if you're satisfied that the RFP is in good shape, I think you could make a motion to direct staff to release the RFP. Annette and I were talking earlier today about kind of a reasonable time frame for the RFP to be out. We think that probably 30 days would be normal, but with the holidays, probably 45 days is acceptable, and that's what we recommend.
Okay. Moved by Councilmember Meadows, seconded by the Mayor Pro Tem. Any questions?
I think this is a great thing. I think this is something we needed for a long time, and I appreciate the work on it.
Thank you.
All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? You have yourself an RFP.
Great, thank you.
Next on the agenda is item 5.2, consideration of an ordinance 1459, an ordinance to regulate small cell wireless communication facilities development. And I do have a blue card. Would this be the correct time to do it? From Eli Gregg. It's a familiar name.
Yep, thanks. I'm Eli Gregg, and I am part of a participant in the small cell industry, and I looked through the ordinance as this version is written, and it appears to be a good ordinance. And I mostly wanted to make myself available at this meeting in case any of the members or community had questions about the industry from member as you go through the ordinance or the terms. If there's any questions that come up, I'll be here and available. That's it.
I appreciate that.
Thanks.
It's a complicated topic. Okay, so our staff person on this is Mr. Yaden?
Yes, thank you.
Yep.
From here is okay, I take
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Just get close to your mic.
All right. As council may remember, those that were on council at the time, this was introduced back in May. At that point, we thought that there was some urgency to it due to some pressing small cell industry people that wanted to come in. It didn't turn out that there was. I worked with Mr. Haywood over the summer, and we made some changes to what was introduced. Basically, this just conforms our ordinance to the state law. The state really took away a lot of our discretion in most of these matters as far as setting costs and amounts that have to be paid for the use of our right-of-way. This is in conformity with the state law. The one section that I would point you to that probably is a little bit out of line with state law is it does allow for some zoning of certain small cell facilities, those that exceed the height and so forth. And all I did there was refer the matter to the zoning code through the process, through the special use permit process. That'd be on page 20 of 29 as it shows up on your agenda, section 42-274. subparagraph C. So that's the only thing of note. Everything else is just code. It does allow for the maximum fees per state law, but those are so nominal anyway under this state law that I don't think that it's not overly burdensome at this point for anyone.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the city attorney?
Okay. I had one, but I asked it earlier. It was boring and probably not relevant to the public discussion. So
essentially, this makes our ordinance comply with state law.
It does, and I would ask that if it's adopted, the ordinance 1459 as modified on your agenda is the one that get adopted.
Can I make one comment?
Yes.
We move it. As some of you might have realized, the member from the audience that spoke is my husband. I spoke to our attorney before the meeting about whether or not I should recuse myself from this, but since we are really only following state law and not adjusting any of the fees, it doesn't seem relevant. So,
thank you for that.
Yep.
Now you want to make a motion?
Motion to approve ordinance 1459 as modified, as indicated in the agenda item report on November 19th, 2019.
Is there a second?
A second.
It's been moved by the Mayor Pro Tem and seconded by Councilmember Gregg. Any more discussion on this item? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ordinance is adopted. The next and last item on the agenda is the consideration of ordinance 1476, an ordinance to amend the Historic District Commission rules of procedure, establish preservation guidelines, and allow for solar energy technologies. And we have a blue card. Ms. Wing, are you still here? Yeah. Would you like to speak on this before we get started?
Hello again. Diane Wing, 1024 Huntington Road. I'm also the vice chair of the Historic District Commission. And I know that you have in your agenda packet a letter from Jessica Flores, who's the chair of the HDC, with comments about the changes that are in front of you tonight. And so I'm just here to represent the HDC in general, ask that you consider the comments that Chair Flores made in her letter. Of particular concern is the conflict that has been introduced into the ordinance. At the very end of the ordinance, the changes to the ordinance that add into it solar efficiency, solar technology. I'm having a hard time, we're all having hard times with our laptops tonight, apparently.
Yeah.
Getting down to the very end of that paragraph. There we go.
Section 2101B.
Thank you.
Section 20, and then items A through C.
Items A through C following letter number F, and I think some of the lettering on the ordinance is a little bit off there as well. But under letter F, the statement is that the HGC will not deny a certificate of appropriateness for anybody approaching the commission seeking solar technology with several other mitigating items there. But that's in direct conflict to an earlier change that's being made to the ordinance in that the HGC shall only follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation. So this conflict got introduced that we're not allowed to deny, under the way it's written now, we're not allowed to deny it unless these other items are met, but yet earlier in the ordinance we're told we can only follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. So this would literally put us into conflict, and we would not know how to respond to an applicant who was applying for solar technology. The other thing not referenced in Chairperson Flores' letter is the fact that while we have to comply with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. That's what state law demands that we follow for the establishment of historic districts. We already have to do that. But as part of solar technology, the Secretary of the Interior standards has actual standards for solar technology and efficiency, and yet none of those standards are referenced within the ordinance as drafted by former Councilmember Draheim. So my concern this evening is that I feel that the ordinance in front of you today, as written from the October 29th meeting, is still not to the point where it should actually be adopted by council. I think there's more tweaking that can be done, and it's not to eliminate solar technology, because everybody on the HDC is completely in favor of making sure that we have within the ordinance the ability to approve solar technology. We're not against having to follow the Secretary of the Interior standards for rehabilitation, because that's what we're following today. But it's to make sure that we don't introduce conflicts into the ordinance, so that we're not causing more problems when we actually do get somebody in front of us. And to be very specific, we've never had anybody in front of the HDC asking to have solar installed. So it's not like we've ever even been able to contemplate it in order to deny it. And frankly, we're all looking forward to the day that we actually have somebody bringing in front of us solar technology.
Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question.
Councilmember Meadows?
And there's no reason for this to be passed tonight. In other words, you guys aren't waiting for this to actually be in front of you.
No.
Well, on the order of the mayor, I'm your new liaison, so I'm going
I saw that as well.
try to short circuit this. I'd like to move to defer this to our next business meeting so we have a chance to look at this language and maybe make another change with regard to it.
Is there a second? Seconded by Councilmember Babcock. The motion was made by Councilmember Meadows to defer, you said?
Defer to I can't remember the date of our next meeting, but the next business
to our next
meeting.
meeting.
December 3rd.
December 3rd.
Any discussion about this motion? Councilmember Gregg.
I did read Chair Flores' letter, and possibly because I'm not familiar with all of the different languages involved with the historic district, but I believe Councilmember Draheim's intent was just to facilitate installing solar technology. Absolutely. And to make sure that historic district guidelines were not used as a reason to preclude it. So if you guys had a suggestion of how to resolve that conflict that you've pointed out within the wording, that would preserve that intent. I think that we would, be
Well,
pretty open to hearing.
Just in the issue of full transparency, we had actually worked with Councilmember Draheim at the HDC meeting of October 10th, and we had worded what, and I'm only speaking for myself now, obviously the rest of the commission is not here, but we had worded what I thought was an agreeable ordinance. Certainly former Councilmember Draheim was there at the meeting, and there was a lot of discussion back and forth. And it was only after the HDC met and worked on the ordinance on the 10th that there were additional edits made by Councilmember Draheim that were then presented to two of you at least. I know three of you weren't at the meeting on October 29th. And that's when new edits were introduced that started to conflict with what we had originally agreed to with Councilmember Draheim on the 10th. So we can get back to this, I feel, very easily. I don't think it was intentional, but but where we're ending up is we're ending up with an ordinance in conflict. And frankly, people are already confused enough about the HDC and what they need to do to comply with the Secretary of Interior standards that I don't want to inadvertently introduce more confusion into the process, especially when we don't have anything pressing in front of us. We don't have a current application, to my knowledge, nor am I'm sure that staff would have told us if we had somebody talking about solar technology within one of the historic districts.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
And just to kind of, and this is a question for you, so is the main concern here that subsection C, where decision only on the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation?
No, actually, it's items A through C following F. It's the fact that the council, that the commission shall not deny. That's the problem.
Okay, so let's get back to, unless there's a question about the motion. The motion is to defer this to our next business meeting and to have.
That's December 3rd.
December 3rd, and to have Councilmember Meadows as our liaison. That's too many M's. To figure this out with the HDC. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, it is deferred. Thank you.
Thank you for your consideration. We appreciate it.
Yes, and with that, we are adjourned. Second gavel.